Good morning and welcome to our sophomore college and academic advising event, an intro to the college admissions process. My name is Colleen Murray and I'm the Dean of College and Academic Advising at the Bear Creek School. And I'm joined today by our Dean of Academic Advising, Mrs. Schultz, and we are delighted and pleased to offer guidance and answers to your questions about the college admissions journey. I would like to open us this morning in a word of prayer. Lord, thank you so much for this beautiful day. We know you are good. Thank you for our time together to learn about the college journey, and we know you have a great plan for each individual student. We love who we become when we lean into you, Lord, and thank you for guiding and leading each of us to demonstrate wisdom, compassion, and courage. Amen. Well, this morning we have a lot of information to cover with you, and we're excited to do so. I'm going to also offer the chat feature for those of you who would like to post questions as you think of them throughout the presentation, and we're going to carve out time at the end of our presentation to respond to those questions for you. So that will be happening. We're going to be covering this morning the topics to include how college decisions are made, college representative visits to the Bear Creek School, touring colleges and universities. We'll look at extracurricular activities and the importance of those in a college admission decision. We'll talk about the testing piece and all things college related for the rising juniors. All right, let's look at this slide. This is an interesting and important piece to note, I think, in that we want to help students and families to know that the college admissions process is oftentimes imprecise and it can be subjective. It isn't a black and white process. Students are looking to make a right match for themselves with a particular institution. So when families are looking at whether or not a student can be admitted at a certain institution, we try to encourage them to think firstly on whether or not that institution is a right match for him or her. And the colleges and universities on the other side of this piece are also looking to make a right match for their campus community. They're looking at their institutional goals. They have those vary from year to year, of course, as they're building a diverse freshman class annually, and so their needs change. So we want to help you to see and know the college's stance in this process, as well as the students or the applicants' stance in this process. The college admission officers are thoughtful, caring. They really do weigh a lot of information in making a college admission decision. And so I think that's important to share with you as they and you are seeking to make a right match. Next slide, please. The process of choosing a college is a very personalized one. It's very individualized. Here at the Bear Creek School, we do encourage our students to think about what's important to him or her in the process. As the student is discovering and exploring different types of colleges out there, they're looking at many factors in making a college admissions choice. How do I learn best? What type of environment am I seeking? Size, geographic location, area of study, school spirit, a Christian college, a secular institution perhaps. Some students are seeking colleges and universities on the East Coast, some on the West Coast, some in the Midwest. A lot of different things, weather. A lot of different things come into play when thinking about the colleges and what's out there. As the students are embarking on this process, they're going to be taking advantage of the many, many resources available to them at school and outside of the high school. At school, the students have, and we're going to take a peek at, a lot of information in our college website at the Bear Creek School and through our web-based platform called Naviance. We'll look at that as well. And then they have the college advising office certainly to support in that regard. College admission officers that represent the institution are also a fabulous resource that the student will want to tap into as he or she is researching, getting to know the college and university, and understanding it and whether or not it will be on his or her list. So we're looking at all kinds of different things in the college admission decision. Thank you. Next slide. Some of the components of the college admission decision include the courses that one takes, the performance in those courses in high school. Those are equally weighed. So the course selection is keenly important in the student's life and building a profile, if you will, for the colleges and universities to consider. So we do a lot of personalized advising here, as you know, at Bear Creek with regard to course selection. And then certainly the student will want to perform at full capacity in those courses. Some colleges and universities will take into account the SAT or the ACT exam. The personal essay that one writes is extremely valuable to the college admissions officers as they're reading through the files, really getting to know the student through their story, their personalized story. So that's a wonderful thing that the colleges want to hear from the student, hear their voice, understand who they are as they discern whether or not that student will make a great addition to their community. So that essay component of the application is important. The recommendation letters, college advising, teacher recommendation letters are also considered and highly valued in the college admissions review. Students have the opportunity to dip into extracurricular activities within school and outside of it. Certainly that is a valuable piece as the student has an opportunity to explore what he or she might be interested in, passionate about, demonstrate a special skill or talent. All of those extracurricular activities are valued. Volunteering in one's community, taking a course outside of school in an area of interest, perhaps. Many things that we can offer and suggest for you in that regard, students. And then your students are also demonstrating interest in a college. The college and universities want to know whether or not you value them. So we groom our students to demonstrate interest in the institution. The student might visit the institution, might sit with the college admission officer when he or she comes to our school. We have over 75, 80 colleges that visit annually via Zoom with our students at the school. So students have an opportunity to demonstrate interest in numerous ways by getting to know the admissions officers, who are oftentimes the first reader of their applications. Next slide, please. So as we know, all of those things we just talked about are what's known as the holistic review. The colleges are taking into account many factors, not just grades, but many things in an admissions decision. So we want to ensure that students are at peace and understand that they do have control over many aspects of this process, to include taking their time when they're writing their essay, visiting with admissions officers, talking with the college advisor at the school, helping us to get to know who you are, what your interests are, so that we can advocate for you with the colleges. That's one piece that's extremely important in helping guide you to the best match schools. So those students that are sitting and looking at what classes they want to take for grade 11 and then for grade 12, want to ensure that they have balance. They're taking their extracurricular activities into consideration, certainly, as they're choosing and deciding which courses are best suited for him or her. There's no right or wrong classes. It varies with students' abilities, needs, interests, and all of the above. All right, next slide. Balance is the key. A lot of times students will ask, well, do I need to take AP classes to be admitted into a good college? And so that's so subjective. What is a good college? And that we want to ensure that the student is properly matched to the colleges on his or her list. So we take a lot of time in the junior year to sit down and build a personalized college list. Sometimes students will want to take an advanced placement, a college level class while in high school, an AP, in order to understand and have a deep knowledge of that subject area because he or she has a passion in it and to learn more about it. This is precisely why a student would ask to be enrolled in an AP class, not to take it in order to be admitted to a phenomenal college. We really want to ensure that students are taking these classes for the right reasons and that they're properly placed and that they have balance in that regard. All right, so we want to also caution students to please stay in your own lane. Don't worry about what others are doing, because remember, as you're applying to your colleges later on down the line, we know that the colleges are looking at many, many, many factors in making a decision on your file. Next slide, please. One of the most important pieces that we offer to the colleges and universities is the transcript for you, the permanent record, if you will. The colleges and universities will recalculate the cumulative GPA. Many of them use a different calibration for that, and that's not unusual. For example, the University of California and the California State University systems will calculate the admissions GPA based on grades 10 and 11. They will see grade 12 later on down the line as students are matriculating to those institutions if they choose to, but a lot of information that varies with each college and the game rules vary at each. We also have a piece in our college and academic advising site at the Bear Creek School known as the school profile. And that is a piece that we share with the colleges and universities. And so when you look at our website, you'll be able to see that we have many, many pieces of information for you under college and academic advising for credits required for graduation, all of that information with regard to the high school profile. So this again is a phenomenal resource on our website for you to take a look at when you have time. You'll see when you scroll down toward the bottom that there's the profile right above our pictures. This profile goes out to the college admissions officers along with the student's high school transcript. The recommendation letters accompany in that bundle. So when the families look at the profile, they'll be able to see what the colleges are seeing. They are evaluating the applicant within the context of his or her own high school. So our students are not being compared to other students at local or national high schools. They're being evaluated within the context of their school. And the high school profile allows the colleges and universities to see and understand our special programs, our signature programs at school, our requirements, our grading system, our grading scale, our ranking policy, all of those things. So that's where you can find that information. You'll also see many resources available to you noted at the bottom of that website when you have time. Oodles of information for you to tap into, recordings of events and things on our website. All right, let's go to the next slide. Thank you, Pete. The testing piece is a hot topic, as you know, with the global pandemic. Many colleges and universities have gone test optional. Over 1,800 colleges and universities now allow the applicant to have the option, if he or she wishes, to send in SATs or ACTs. So if I were a sophomore parent, I would wonder, does my student have to even take these? Can they opt out? And if so, when and why? And the answer is, it depends on the college the student is applying to. And of course, we don't know yet because the student maybe hasn't even had a visit to a college to see and know whether or not he or she likes that institution or finds it to be a right fit or feels right. But I do recommend that a student in the junior year sit for the SAT or the ACT, and we can talk all about that in your individual meetings. But we do have a presentation coming up on the 1st of February to go over all of these things and the differences between the exams and how colleges and universities utilize them. For example, if a student is applying to a college that notes that it is now test optional, the student has the option to send a score or not. What we want to do is give the student the best chance for admission. And unless there's a massive test anxiety issue or the student really does not want to step into that space with the testing, we'll recommend that he or she go ahead and have that test. And then we look at the score and we deduce whether or not it would behoove the student to send the score to this particular institution and not this one, or so it kind of depends on the average, the 50% range for scores for the average freshman profile at said institution. So if we wanted to be admitted to any institution, Whitworth or something, we can look to see online at their website and in the search bar, type freshman profile, those two words. It'll bring up what this year's or last year's senior class looked like, average GPA, scores, all of those kinds of things. So it's our goal to position the student best. And oftentimes I'll recommend that he or she not submit scores if they are not going to help him or her to be admitted. So if they're a little bit under the bubble, a little low, and aren't going to put him or her in the best possible light, then we would advise you have the option to not send, and I recommend you do not send. And the colleges never see any of the scores unless you go online and pay through the American College Test or the College Board for the SAT with your Visa, MasterCard, and send the scores to the colleges. So it's not a problem for the student to sit for the exams, and then we can go from there. If a student is applying to an institution that does still require scores for admission, MIT, yeah, you'd want to take those exams and be ready to go. All right, a lot coming your way on this piece. Next slide, thank you. The PSAT is the preliminary training wheel version of the SAT, and that will be offered on the 12th in school. Students are automatically registered for it. National Merit Scholarship Corporation kicks out a scholarship for students who score per state in a certain range that varies annually. So this is an important exam. It's a great practice test. So the PSAT will be taken by all high school juniors across the country on the very same morning. And those scores do not go to the colleges, but we do utilize that in advising the student. All right, next slide, thank you. The official dates coming up for our juniors will be noted here. As mentioned, the junior year is the testing year. Typically, students are sitting for their first exam after their PSAT scores come back in December. So the scores will come back from the almighty College Board in December early, and then we look at those and we evaluate and determine whether or not the student would be advised to sit for an SAT or perhaps pivot for the ACT. We'll also have pre-ACT scores to utilize in advisement. So those early fall deadlines, or excuse me, offerings for the exams, as you can see, before Christmas are usually geared for the seniors that want to retest if necessary to improve their scores and send them off to their colleges as they're in the application mode in the early fall. So our juniors are looking at the March, the May, the June, the February, the April, the June, July. All right, next slide. Advanced placement, as mentioned, is an option for some students, and they will have an examination in May. These scores are taken into consideration in the college admissions piece. Oftentimes, a college will grant elective or subject area credit for a passing score on the AP, a 3, a 4, or a 5. Each college, as mentioned, has its own game rules. So Pepperdine might only accept 4s and 5s and not a 3, thank you very much, even though a 3 is a passing score and another college would accept a passing 3. So we ask that students just keep in mind that all of these things are personal and they're not, you know, stirring the pot and sharing about themselves and their scores and all of those things as they go through this process. Thank you. Next slide. We can look on any college website and see the 50% range for admitted students, as mentioned earlier. You know, the colleges and universities will be taking into account many factors and utilizing the courses, the transcript, the college advisor, the teacher recs, the essay component, and then those scores can definitely be a thumb on the scale in helping a student to move into the yes pile. So sometimes a student might be deferred at Christmas time. They're going to be applying via the early action round. We'll talk a lot about this in the junior year. The students will have the option to apply early around Halloween, before November 1, or regular decision, January 1st or 15th deadline. So if a student applies via the early round, sometimes the college will admit the student off that round, and they will know by Christmas time whether or not they've been admitted. Sometimes they'll defer and they'll roll the applicant over to the regular admission pool and hold on to that application and admit or deny in April. And so in that case, sometimes a student might have the option to sit for another exam and display that interest, demonstrating that interest and putting another solid score their way. So we'll talk all about those things. As you can see, it's extremely fluid. It's not just a, you know, hit send, credit card, I've applied, hope I get admitted. There's a lot of grooming, conversations, and action on the part of the applicant that comes into play. All right, next slide. In January, incidentally, the individual college advising meetings begin for the junior class. The FairTest.org is a great website that's noted on our school resources page, and in Naviance we have a lot of information in our resources folder within Naviance. We have a monthly newsletter that is kicked out in Naviance on the home page. In the fall, the college admission officers will have scheduled themselves to visit virtually with our students. So students will be able to see, come September, the colleges and universities noted on the home page under What's New. And they'll be able to see that a college they might be interested in is coming to visit our students, and they can self-register for those. Many of them, as mentioned, are optional on the testing piece, so I thought I'd throw out that fairtest.org just for you to have and to note. Many are pivoting with this pandemic, and they're determining their own policies as they vary with each institution. So many, as you can see, are going to stay with their test optional policy through, looks like Harvard through 2026. So every school is different. All right, next slide. When a student is considering the extracurricular activities that he or she would like to dip into, we want to echo the colleges and universities in messaging that it isn't about how many activities one has involved him or herself in. Certainly, one or two activities over an extended amount of time would be quite something, wouldn't it? Because the student would be able to have deep and meaningful impact by being involved in or volunteering in an activity or service over 2, 3, 4 years. So the students are encouraged to really find activities that excite them, that they'd like to learn more about, and that they have a passion for. All right, so it's not a matter of molding ourselves to what we think a college would like to see, but rather it's about exploring who you are and what makes you tick and what makes you excited. If you like working with children and you're thinking you might want to be a teacher one day, those students are volunteering at church, they're working with children, they're tutoring others at the lower school perhaps, they're babysitting in their neighborhood, they're reaching out and doing things, and in that way, it's a very authentic process indeed, and they can determine whether or not that is something that they do want to pursue, they might want to do, they might want to embark on or learn more about. All right, next slide. Our students in grade 11 have a huge leg up in the process for applying to college because they are working on the college essay in English class as part of their assignment. So our students have a common application essay ready to go by the time they leave for summer break. So that's phenomenal. Our students have an opportunity to work on the main essay. The common application is something that's accepted by 900 colleges and universities, and they have a general question. There are prompts, choices, and the student will select one and write an essay on it under the umbrella of the Bear Creek School. And it's phenomenal. We help, we read, we advise, and we encourage. So that's something that the students want to take seriously. And then in senior year as well, our students are working on those supplemental essay pieces for the application. The colleges and universities often will have a couple of extra questions, supplemental essays, in addition to the main Common App essay that all colleges will see. They'll want to know, why Santa Clara? Why are you interested in us? Or tell us how our mission and vision resonate with you. So they're trying to learn about the student through the supplemental essays, very important essays. All right, thank you. Next slide. The letters of recommendation, again, are very important in helping the colleges to know the student. Our teachers love writing for our students. In grade 11, in the springtime, the juniors will have the opportunity to request one or two teachers write for him or her. And so we encourage our students to seek out teachers who really know them well and who can tout their strengths in the classroom, perhaps outside of it, with anecdotal examples. Perhaps a student might want to ask a teacher in the visual and performing arts to write for him or her, and complement that with other teacher recommendation letters if a student is interested in studying a specific area. For example, engineering, he or she would be encouraged to ask a math or science teacher, certainly, for a recommendation letter. So those are things to be thinking on as a student is stepping into grade 11, keeping excellent relationships with one's teachers. All right, next slide. Sometimes students will ask someone from the community to write as well to complement the academic references that he or she receives. A pastor, perhaps, an employer, a coach, a judge. I had a student a couple years ago have a judge here in Redmond write on his behalf as he was going pre-law. And so he had the opportunity to work with him throughout the summers. So those are important pieces that come into play. The juniors and their parents are asked to complete a questionnaire in December of grade 11. The questionnaire is extremely important in helping set the table for the college advisor recommendation letter. So that's something that we greatly appreciate. And the parents as well have the option to complete a questionnaire, and the students are asked to do so. They're required to. All right, next slide. Very quickly, one of the things that we talk about in our individual meetings is a list of colleges that is built specifically for that student. What might be a likely to be admitted, hands down, slam dunk college for one student could be a reach school for another student, as all students are different and their profiles look different. So we work very hard to ensure that we have at least 2 or 3 colleges on the students list that are likely to be admitted, that the student is excited about, that he or she will be admitted to likely, and that they can afford. And so when we build off that foundation with our likelies, 2 or 3 of those, sometimes students, oftentimes, will have other colleges on their radar that they would like to be admitted to. And so those would be target schools where they're right on point at that mid 50% range. And some are reaches where perhaps the acceptance rate is in the single digits. So we want to take into account the acceptance or the admit rate at each institution as well when building the college list. So if it's a 4% are accepted, regardless of whether the student has the averages and meets those or supersedes them perhaps with scores or GPA or other things, if the acceptance rate is low, it goes into the reach list just because they aren't guaranteed admission, certainly anywhere. All right, I hope that's helpful. Next slide, please. The scholarships and financial aid piece will have a robust offering on this piece in grade 11 and in grade 12. The free application for federal student aid is the form that the students and parents fill out for each institution. Some colleges and universities also require an additional form called the CSS profile, and that's the institution's own aid that they will determine to give out based on the CSS. So every college has its own financial aid deadlines. A lot of information coming your way when it's time for that, but I just wanted to make mention of it for you. We also have private scholarships from the community that are offered to juniors and seniors, and those are housed in our scholarship folder in the document section of Naviance. So those are things to tap into, certainly starting in grade 11. All right, next slide. An award letter will be issued, incidentally, by each college a good couple of weeks after the acceptance comes out, and it will include the estimated family contribution that's determined by the feds after one fills out the FAFSA form. The colleges and universities will offer sometimes loans, grants, the good stuff, the free money, the not pay back grants, and a combination therein. So those are bundled typically with the admission decision, and definitely within a couple of weeks after one is admitted, the financial package will arrive. All right, thank you. Next slide. All right, again, lots of information. The College Board does have a really neat scholarship search as well that you can tap into for private monies. Sally Mae, fastweb.com. All of these things are noted for scholarship search. Outside scholarships can be very fruitful and take some time. They often require an additional essay on behalf of the applicant. So that's something that students can keep on their radar and apply for scholarships as they wish. Okay, thank you. Next slide. In January, there will be a college planning for juniors and parents event on that morning. It'll be a Teams event, and it will be recorded, of course. And then, as mentioned on the 1st, you can mark your calendar for the Navigating College Admissions Testing. A lot of information coming your way. After the college planning event for juniors and parents, the individual college advising meetings begin with the student and parents. And the students sign up for their slot, and they take an entire period, and they're very personalized and fruitful, and it's a lot of good conversation there. All right, thank you. Next slide. The Fax comes out with lots of information, so that's something to keep an eye on. The Naviance newsletters every month is very informative and timely. We note college fairs that are coming to town for the students to visit with their parents, with the college admission officers. We have a bulletin board upstairs at the top of the stairs for students to look and see all the posters and take note of when the colleges are coming to visit us at school. Students are embarking on college tours now, as they are permitting families to visit the campuses in person again. And so a student has the option of registering, or parents can certainly register the family to attend the institution and go to the info sessions and things like that at the various colleges. And that's extremely valuable. All right, next slide. These are just a sampling of some of the colleges and universities that have visited our school over the years. It varies from year to year, and those will be posted in September. So when the students come back for junior year, they'll be able to see all the colleges that are planning to come, and that grows certainly over time as the colleges are registering themselves for a visit to our school. So students will want to take advantage of visiting with an admissions officer along with other students, so that they can understand and know what comes into play in an admission decision, and most importantly, what that college has to offer them. And they get to know the admission officers as well. So it's a wonderful thing to encourage our juniors to participate in, definitely. And especially in grade 12, visit with the college reps, because if you're applying to that particular institution, you would want to attend the meeting if at all possible when they come to your high school. All right, next slide. Students are definitely filling out the applications. They're responsible for every aspect of the apps. They're responsible for meeting the deadlines, communicating, self-advocating as we groom them to do so. They're answering emails with the college admissions officers. And then they're the ones who are shining. They're the ones approaching the admission officer at a table at a college fair, and doing the talking, asking the questions. Yes, parents can also ask questions, but we want to ensure that our students are the ones who are shining in this process, and just make sure that they have that voice that's coming out there. All right, okay, next slide. Parents are the ones who know their child better than anyone else. And so I think it's important to help the student to know where he or she will learn best, what might be a good fit for him or her, cost issues, anything around specialized areas of study that you think your student would be well suited for. All of those conversations start happening now and complement the messaging that's coming from college and academic advising at Bear Creek. Okay, thank you. Next slide. It's important to think about what you value as a family, what's most important to you. If the student is interested in applying perhaps across the country or maybe outside of the country, and the family does not wish that for him or her, perhaps those are the conversations that are best had at the front end of the process. Any parameters around financials, all of those things are healthy conversations to be had. The parents often coordinate and help with college visits, getting those together, arrangements for transportation to those. The parents also might send the official scores through ACT or College Board with the credit card to the colleges. I think that's absolutely fine. All of those things, we all play a part in the process, but the student is taking the baton and running with it, definitely, as the junior year takes place and on into grade 12. The students are leading this student-centered process. All right, next slide. The individual one-on-ones begin in January and they continue through March. And from that meeting, the student will have a college list in pencil that will change absolutely by the time they're hitting send in grade 12. But the juniors like to have their college list in hand. It's a curated list specific to him or her. And it is something that does change once the student researches, visits the schools, has opportunity to dip into the process in an earnest way. And then they come back after the summer, after grade 11, and discuss why they prefer this or that. And then we work to find like-minded or schools that are similar to what they've determined is important to them. All right, next slide. All right, so the fall, the students are applying. Yes, grade 12 comes into play all the way through. I just had a junior ask me yesterday, Mrs. Murray, You know, I'm going to be a senior next year. Are the colleges going to see my grade 12 grades? Yes, they will. Yes, they do. We send a mid-year report. If the student decides to apply via the January regular decision deadline, then the colleges and universities will utilize all of that information up till Christmas time when making an evaluation of the file. So those are, the testing is all completed by the early fall in grade 12. They can retest if they need to in the fall of grade 12, but the junior year springtime is the testing time. All right, next slide. Some relevant books that to recommend. Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be, a great read by Frank Bruni, How to Raise an Adult. Some other wonderful resources available here if you wish to borrow any. We have lots of books, or you can grab them certainly on Amazon.Prime. The Book of Majors, the Fisk Guide, lots of information, the Princeton Review, the College Finder, lots of wonderful resources in book form and on the web for you to utilize along the way. And we'd like to now open it up for your questions. Does anybody have any questions for us? If you want to post them in the chat, we're happy to answer them. All right, so we don't see any questions so far in the chat. Mrs. Schultz is noting there are no questions at this time. We'd like to offer that if you do think of questions after this presentation, definitely reach out. We're happy to take your calls, and we look forward to working with you and supporting you through the college admissions process here. We're excited, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you.
Good job, Colleen. That was